FDA announcing a recall for hundreds of thousands of bottles of water, more than 650,000 of them distributed in Illinois and Wisconsin, recalled in late February after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration found that the bottles may have been, quote, bottled under insanitary conditions, end quote. Let's check in with water expert Razgaitis. Good to see you, Raz.
Marina, great seeing you again.
All right, let's talk about this because you're a disruptor in this space, and clearly every so often we hear about issues with microplastics, in this case, bottled in, quote, insanitary conditions. What does that mean?
Well, what can happen is bottled water ends up going through a manufacturing process. So you have the treatment facility, you have production lines, you've got capping, you've got holding tanks, and then eventually it gets packaged and distributed. And so unsanitary conditions can exist along the way. And as we're learning, and as we've learned before, bottled water is not immune to contamination. And so one of the top issues for consumer minds around drinking water is simply trust in that drinking water. And as we're seeing with the Valley Spring recall of 650,000 gallons of that, you're seeing just an evidence as to how this can get contaminated in ways that you might not expect, but it impacts consumers at the retail store.
And in much of the world, the safest option is bottled water.
Well, it is in certainly third world countries where you have a much more polarizing issue and a much more acute issue with things like bacterial and viral risk in contaminated waterways. But I think one of the issues that we have in the United States here, and if you look at bottled water, while people tend to often think it is safer, there's a lot of negative byproducts of bottled water as well. We don't have an issue necessarily even called a bottled water problem. We have a problem called the United States. People don't trust their tap water. And so as a result, they reach for bottled water. One of the things that many people don't know, and a Columbia University study highlighted this a couple years ago, where the average bottle of water has over 200,000 microparticulates of plastic. And so even when you're drinking out of a bottle of water, even if it is pure, you're still drinking your bottled water when you're drinking out of a bottle of water.
Unbelievable. I mean, we talk about this, and clearly so much has changed, and yet still, you walk down the supermarket aisle, and there's just aisles and shelves of plastic filled with water. We know that there are companies that are now putting their water in glass, and that's clearly not an economically, feasible way to just do business unless you have endless money for people to just purchase that and to live off that. And I know that filters are a different conversation, but what do you think in the future, in 10, 20 years, how are we going to be drinking water in the country, in the U.S.? Is it still going to be what is status quo now?
Well, I see a very clear migration away from single-use plastics, and that's because of the growing level of awareness. Average American has a credit card's worth of plastic ingested through what they eat, drink, and breathe every single week. The average American has a plastic spoon's worth of microplastics sitting in their brain. That's a result of also what we eat and drink. So we're seeing single-use plastic water bottles are very much like the new cigarette. And so we're going to see a decline of that. What we need to see is restoration of our infrastructure. What we're starting to see people do in kind of drastic measures is treat the last 5 feet of water lines. So municipal water does the best job getting that water to you. At the end of the day, though, there's fewer than 100 chemicals and contaminants that are regulated in drinking water, even though there's 50,000 use in the United States. And so the best way to address your tap water concerns are to treat the last 5 feet of water line by installing a device that filters, ideally purifies. That is just an extra safety measure, and the proper purification device will rip out microplastics, pharmaceuticals, herbicides, pesticides, PFAS, all of those things that you don't want in your water, and that'll cause you to eventually trust your water and drink more of it once you treat it properly. It
sounds like you've got a positive outlook on this. Like, we've turned a corner. We're not just there yet, but we're certainly turning it.
We are, and I feel like segments like this, this used to be a very rare occurrence where we're talking about plastics or microplastics, our drinking water, PFAS, lead in tap water. I mean, this was not a common story in our news feeds 5, 10, 15 years ago. This is now a weekly relevant topic, and that's because 70 to 80% of Americans don't trust or don't like what's coming out of their faucet. Yet they also know that single-use plastic water bottles are not the solution. And so this level of awareness enables us to further the cause of restoring America's drinking water, because it's a fundamental human right. Everyone deserves access to clean drinking water that they can trust. And it's our responsibility to make that right a reality. And that's one of the things that Flowwater is working on.
Raz, we appreciate it, and we thank you always for having the conversation. Always good to talk to you.
Brene, great to see you. Thank you.
We'll be right back.